in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. For 5 years, I had done everything to curry favor with Cousin Arthur, yet in his eyes, I remained nothing a nuisance. Every time we met, he would push his handsome younger brother forward to deal with me. Until one day, Arthur fell into the lake, and it was I who jumped in to save him. He told me he would grant me one wish, even a marriage alliance. Overjoyed, I immediately asked, in that case, if I became your sister-in-law, what would you think? Arthur froze. I stood under my umbrella outside the academy for half a moment, waiting until Arthur finally emerged, surrounded by a crowd. His classmates saw me and jeered. Tease? Brother Arthur is truly blessed to have a beauty waiting for him, even the wind and rain cannot stop her. Arthur's footsteps faltered. His gaze swept over the one who had just spoken, and his expression instantly darkened. He pursed his lips and strode into the rain, stopping right in front of me. The autumn rain fell in slanting sheets, soaking one side of his shoulder. Why are you here? His voice was colder than the autumn rain itself. I stood on tiptoe to hold the umbrella over him, my voice full of excitement. Today is the Lantern Festival. I intended to. I had not yet finished my sentence when he raised his hand to stop me. Arthur's gaze swept over me, resembling the gray sky above, devoid of warmth and carrying a trace of indifference. I have matters to attend to and cannot go. Let Jasper go with you. Having said this, he looked at me no longer, nor did he wait for my response, but turned and boarded his carriage to depart. I stood dazed, watching the carriage disappear from sight, my heart pausing for a moment. Did he truly have business or not? What did it have to do with me? I had not intended to invite him in the first place. Before the academy gates, a few students had not yet left. Their gazes stuck to me like damp spiderwebs, carrying unconcealed scrutiny and whispered gossip. See that? She was stood up again. Arthur is truly ungracious. Shh, keep your voice down. Look there, Jasper. A tall, slender figure had quietly taken his place beside me, blocking the wind at my back, and also blocking those unpleasant stares. Reflexively, I turned around and Jasper's face filled my vision. The misty rain only accentuated his skin, cold and white as white jade. He reached out to take the umbrella, his beautiful fox-like eyes curving slightly. The bakery in the West City has those pastries you like. Would you like to go try them? We can wait until evening to release the lanterns. Fine then, the process does not matter. After all, the person accompanying me is Jasper. Thinking this, I offered him a sweet smile. Alright. The pastries were soft and delicious, the lanterns brilliant and dazzling. Jasper bought a snow-white rabbit lantern. The frame was slender, pasted with thin paper, its appearance foolish yet adorable. He handed the lantern to me, his fingertips inadvertently brushing against the back of my hand before he hurriedly pulled back. I carried that rabbit lantern, its light swaying at my feet, and my heart gently swayed along with that circle of light. By the time we returned to the manor, the moon had tilted toward the west. The cold moonlight poured down like water, spreading across the courtyard like a sparkling galaxy, and clearly illuminating a tall, lonely figure standing beneath the corridor. It was Arthur. He seemed to have been standing there for a long time, the hem of his robe damp with evening dew. His entire person was submerged in the murky darkness beneath the eaves, obscuring his expression. He stepped out of the night. Jasper's voice was gentle. Why has elder brother not yet rested? Arthur ignored him, looking only at me to ask, was it fun? Jasper laughed softly. Of course it was fun. Clara's song even praised the lantern I chose as suited her very well. I was just bowing my head to play with the lantern tassels. Hearing this, I immediately nodded. That is right. Arthur's gaze fell straight onto the lantern in my hand. Suddenly, he let out a scoff. Ugly. Having spoken, he flung his sleeve and turned to leave. I was left stunned by his senseless remark. What was wrong with him now? Jasper gently patted my shoulder, his voice softening further. His temperament is cold. He is like that with everyone. Last month he even threw back a scented sachet Miss Lee, gave him right in the edel of a banquet, because it did not suit his taste. Clara, do not hold it against him. I did not take it to heart, for I was used to it. Arthur had never looked upon me with favor. Even the lantern I liked became unsightly in his eyes. It was nothing strange. I always felt Arthur was very suited to be a debt collector. For example, right now, everyone was dining, yet he alone wore a gloomy expression, occasionally shooting a glance sharp as a knife, cold enough to make one shudder. I truly could not bear it, so I turned my chopsticks to pick up a piece of pickled bamboo shoot and placed it in his bowl. Cousin Arthur, please eat. Arthur's chopsticks paused, his gaze falling upon the bamboo shoot in his bowl. After a long moment, he reluctantly picked it up to eat. I breathed a sigh of relief. Arthur's expression had clearly softened. A piece of pickled bamboo shoot could turn a murderous aura into gentleness. It was truly a miracle. Regrettably, that piece did not last long. Jasper was bowing his head eating porridge. I conveniently picked up a piece of food for him. The tip of my chopsticks had just touched the rim of Jasper's bowl when a sharp clatter rang out from across the table. Arthur's chopsticks slammed heavily onto the table. The entire table fell silent. He stood up, his robe knocking over a teacup. Tea splashed, wetting half his sleeve, but he did not bother to spare a glance, simply striding out. Jasper shook his head slightly with a smile, taking out a handkerchief to wipe a drop of water that had splashed onto the back of my hand. "You were not burned, were you?" His fingertips lightly brushed my skin, causing a slight ticklish sensation, as if something had just gently scratched at my heart. I unconsciously pulled my hand back and looked up at him, but he had already lowered his eyes. My face seemed to heat up slightly. I shook my head softly. "I am fine. After finishing the meal I will go to Aunt Song." The courtyard was very quiet. The bronze wind chimes under the eaves were occasionally swayed by the wind, chiming once before sinking back into silence. "Arthur has a cold and stubborn temperament. You must be tolerant of him a little." Aunt Song suddenly spoke. My movement of threading a needle paused briefly. Arthur's mother had passed away, less than a year before his father used the excuse that the manor lacked someone to manage the household to propose to my aunt, a woman from a merchant background. Only after marrying into the Shen manor did Aunt Song realize she had stepped into a fire pit. The account books were in deficit. Her husband was a philandering man, and her own parents had been deceived. Overwhelmed with worry, she suffered 2 miscarriages, and her health was ruined. Before she could recover, my own parents suddenly passed away. My original home, already tottering, completely collapsed at that moment. Amidst countless unpredictable gazes, my aunt gritted her teeth and brought me into the Shen manor. But in this place, on whom could we rely? Arthur was the eldest legitimate son, and exceptionally intelligent. Unsurprisingly, he would be the one to hold power in the Shen manor in the future. Therefore, my aunt always hoped I could get a little closer to him, and then a little closer still. It would be best if I could warm that block of ice so that later on, we would have a place to lean on. I remained dazed until a sharp pain at my fingertip pulled me back to reality. I did not know when the needle had pierced my skin, hurting so much that I let out a soft cry. Aunt Song put down her embroidery frame, gently pulled my hand over, and used a corner of a clean handkerchief to lightly dab the blood stain. "You are this big, yet you still prick your hand while threading a needle." I smiled sheepishly. Aunt Song sighed softly, remaining silent for a moment before continuing. "You are a smart child, Aunt knows. You understand, do you not?" I blinked, understanding. That afternoon, my aunt told me to bring pastries to Arthur. When I arrived in front of the study, the sound of childish reading was echoing from inside. The Shen family had many descendants. As the eldest brother, whenever Arthur had free time, he would teach his younger siblings to read. I looked through the partially open window and saw him with sleeves rolled up, black hair half loose, holding a brush to teach a little brother to write. He looked somewhat gentler than when he had taught me years ago. When I first entered the Shen manor, he had also taught me. At that time, I was 10 years old and had not even finished the primer for girls. Arthur sat under the corridor hugging a copy of the records of the Grand Historian. I walked back and forth beside him countless times, stealing glances from the corner of my eye. I do not remember which time it was when he suddenly looked up. "Do you want to learn?" I nodded like a pounding pestle. He gave a scoff and pushed the book toward me. More than half the characters inside were ones I had never seen. Looking at each line made me dizzy. He rubbed his forehead. "Fine. Come to study tomorrow, I will teach you." Arthur's nature was not bad, he simply lacked patience. If I was a bit slow, he would click his tongue and toss me over to Jasper. Later, when I grew a bit older, he refused to teach me anymore, always saying my handwriting was ugly and annoyed him, delaying his own studies. The truth was he just found me an eyesore. "What are you doing standing there?" I did not know when Arthur had opened the door. He glanced at the box of pastries in my hand, the corners of his lips pressed tight. I came back to my senses and held up the box. "I brought pastries for Cousin Arthur." He took it and turned to enter the room. Seeing I had not moved, he turned his head again. "What are you doing still standing there?" I pursed my lips and followed him inside, choosing a spot by the window to sit down. I glanced around and smoothed a few stray strands of hair. Why do I not see Jasper? Third brother made a fuss, so Jasper took him to buy candied hawthorn sticks. I gave a soft hum. The fourth sister suddenly leaned close and sniffed. Sister Clara, you smell so good. A sweet scent. Arthur's hand, turning a page, paused. I smiled and took out the scented sachet I was wearing. It smells like osmanthus candy. The fourth sister had not yet received it when the sachet was snatched away by Arthur. Children eating too much candy will get cavities. I thought that made sense and reached out my hand. Then return it to me. His wrist lifted slightly, and the sachet was immediately hidden up high. I could not reach it. He glanced at me. You as well. Eat less. Confiscated. Having said this, he conveniently stuffed the sachet into his sleeve. Hey. Arthur did not bother to pay attention to me, only signaling to the fourth sister before turning back to continue reading. This person was truly too much. I had just returned to my small courtyard when Jasper sought me out. In his hand, he held a stick of bright red candied hawthorn. The hawthorn fruits were wrapped in a layer of glistening sugar and offered to me. Here, I bought this for third brother, and conveniently brought one back for you. I accepted it. The irritation in my heart caused by Arthur subsided a little. I took a bite. The sugar layer was crisp, the sweetness wrapping around the sour fruit. You are still the best, I mumbled while chewing. Unlike cousin Arthur, who confiscated my scented sachet and told me not to eat so much candy. The smile at the corner of Jasper's lips faltered for a split second, then quickly returned to normal. The mirth in his eyes became clear again, even more radiant than before. He leaned slightly closer, the wind blowing a few strands of hair at his forehead. Hey, confiscated the old one. Jasper's voice rang out gently, as if a small hook were caught within it. Then let me embroider a new one for you. Would you like that? I still had half a hawthorn berry in my mouth, the sweet and sour taste lingering on the tip of my tongue. I forgot to chew, staring blankly at the face right before my eyes. Jasper was not like the others in the Shen family. If Arthur was a lotus in the lake, pure but not glamorous, then Jasper was a bright red peony, radiant without being vulgar. You know how to embroider. He gave a soft laugh. I know much more than that. Let me embroider a scented sachet for you, all right? Yes, of course. I did not know if it was an illusion, but Jasper seemed to smile even more radiantly. A few days later, a new scented sachet was tied at my waist. It was a red peony pattern embroidered in the Suzhou style, stuffed full of dried apricots Jasper had dried himself. Arthur saw it and asked me, did Jasper embroider that? I lowered my head, my hand playing with the tassels, and gave a soft affirmative sound. He was silent for a moment, his voice deepening. Since when were you two so close? He asked that question very abruptly, like a stone thrown into the middle of a lake, rippling out circle after circle of gentle waves. Jasper's birth mother was a cousin of the former madam. She died early when he was very small. Master Shen's rear court had never been peaceful. Among all the children, he was the quietest. Perhaps because of the connection between their mothers, he often followed closely beside Arthur. At that time, Arthur did not yet detest me so much. I often approached him. Sometimes Arthur found I asked too many questions, disturbing his inherent peace. Sometimes he criticized me for being talkative and clingy. Every time he was annoyed by my pestering, he would frown without bothering to look up, simply waving his hand arbitrarily in a direction. Jasper, take her to play. Jasper and I were the same age, it was easier to converse, and we gradually became close. But when did we truly bond? It was the year we were 14. I do not know why, but at that time Arthur grew increasingly cold toward me. At first the study door was simply closed tight. Later, if we chanced to meet in the corridor, and I happily called out, "Cousin Arthur," he would act as if he had not heard, walking straight past me without sparing me a glance. Such incidents were too numerous to count. Later, I embraced a dragon-shaped paperweight that I had saved up for a long time to buy. I intended to use the occasion of his birthday to make amends. The celebration was very lively. It took me a long time to gather enough courage. Seeing Arthur standing alone by the lake, I lifted my skirt to walk over. Cousin Arthur. I had not yet finished my sentence when several arrogant-looking young masters standing nearby sneered, their voices just loud enough to reach my ears. Rallying on relatives, she thinks she is truly the young miss of the Shen Manor. Tesk, she is just someone from a fallen family here to beg. My cheeks instantly flushed red. Blood rushed straight to the top of my head. Back then, I was not yet sensible enough, and had not learned how to treat those words as wind passing the ears. I only felt ashamed enough to want to bury myself. My eyes unconsciously turned toward Arthur, carrying a final ray of hope. He heard it, he even glanced over this way. Then, as if annoyed by the noise on this side, he coldly turned and flung his sleeve to leave, not saying a word, nor leaving behind even a single look. The group of young masters took the opportunity to press further, treating me as a joke for their amusement. I did not know when Jasper had arrived, but he gently placed a hand on my trembling shoulder. "Clara, Aunt Song is looking for you." Those few immediately fell silent, their faces showing embarrassment as if caught in the act. Only then did Jasper slowly raise his head, his gaze lightly sweeping over them, the corners of his lips still holding a faint smile. A gentleman should think carefully before opening his mouth. For you gentlemen to speak in such a way, I fear all your years of reading the sage's books have gone to the dogs. Having spoken, he pulled me away. That night, I squatted in a corner of the garden, sobbing uncontrollably. Jasper silently sat beside me. When I choked back a sob and looked up, I discovered a grasshopper woven from grass lying in his palm. When I was small, my mother also used this to coax me to stop crying. I stared blankly at him, my tears refusing to stop falling. Jasper sighed softly and wiped a tear stain from the corner of my eye. At that moment, his eyes reflected my small, disabled figure. He said, "Clara, you are very good, so do not be sad anymore." Later, I heard that Arthur secretly went to the academy to report them. Those young masters were punished by copying books 100 times. If they did not copy, he would tell their elders, even though they had always been close before. I mumbled in a low voice, "We were always close before." Arthur was silent but said nothing more. For the past 2 days, Arthur seemed distracted. Yesterday at the academy, he held his brush to take notes, and the ink soaked through to the back of the paper without him noticing. This morning while dining, his chopsticks slipped, yet he still brought them to his mouth. It was truly strange. Night came with light rain. I was returning from Aunt Song's place. From a distance, I saw a figure standing by the lake, green robes soaked through, not even opening an umbrella for cover. I frowned, raising my umbrella to run over. "Cousin Arthur, the rain is heavy. Let us go inside." He seemed to wake with a start, turning his head. His eyes still held a lingering gloom that had not yet dispersed. His gaze stopped on my face, dark and hard to read. He had just opened his mouth when his foot suddenly slipped. Splash. Water sprayed everywhere. Arthur did not know how to swim. Panicked, I immediately threw aside my umbrella and jumped down to pull him up. I had known how to swim since childhood, but Arthur was truly very heavy. I had to try very hard to push him onto the bank. Heavens, someone fell in the water. Is anyone there? The sound of splashing water alerted the servants patrolling at night. Voices, footsteps, and swaying lanterns filled the air, making for a chaotic night. The next morning, just after I had sent Jasper off, he had stayed up all night watching over me. Arthur arrived. Last night, he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Thank you. You saved my life. I owe you a favor. Whatever you desire, I will agree to it." I waved my hand, not taking it to heart. However, the way he looked at me, eyes that had always been indifferent and distant, seemed to crack, silently pouring forth a scorching gaze that carried a hint of desperate, total surrender. Wealth, future prospects, or... Arthur hesitated, his cheeks suddenly flushing. "Marriage is also acceptable." I immediately raised my head, my heart skipping a beat, and a sudden realization flashed through my mind. "You found out?" Arthur froze, the rims of his ears turning redder by the moment. "Did you think I was blind?" Excited, I grabbed his hand. I had not expected Arthur to actually realize it. My years of dedicated currying favor had not been in vain. "Then do you think I can be your sister-in-law? Is this matter?" He froze. "What did you say?" "I asked you, can I be your sister-in-law?" It was rare to see Arthur so stunned. After a while his voice rose sharply. "Clara, repeat that one more time." "I like Jasper. I want to be your sister-in-law. I am speaking very seriously." Arthur's face instantly darkened. "What do you like about him?" I felt a bit shy. "Cousin Arthur knows. I have been a bit lustful since I was small." He interrupted me, annoyed. I giggled, then enthusiastically recounted the process of how I fell for Jasper's looks, and then was moved by his feelings. By the time I looked up, Arthur's face was as black as a thundercloud. I quickly shut my mouth and timidly took a step back. Arthur seemed at a loss for words. After a long while, he let out a cold laugh. "Good. Very what?" "Nothing." He gritted his teeth, forcing a smile. "I will fulfill your wish." Under my confused gaze, Arthur flung his sleeve and left. After that, for several days in a row, I did not see him. Aunt Song sent someone to inquire and was told he had buried himself in the study, sulking for several nights. I felt guilty. What did I say wrong? I liked Jasper, what was he angry about? Arthur locked himself in the study for 3 whole days. Ink spread into black streaks on the rice paper without him noticing. Outside the window, the autumn rain pattered against the eaves, knocking out a chaotic rhythm in his heart. The moment he had uttered that promise, he had practically wagered everything. He thought that as long as she spoke up, as long as she opened her mouth, whether it was wealth, fame, or even himself, as long as she wanted it, he would absolutely not frown. But Clara did not do that. She looked at him with a radiant smile and said she liked Jasper and wanted to be his sister-in-law. The rain grew heavier, beating against the window frame just as it smashed the lock on his memories. At first, regarding the child brought by his stepmother, that little tale named Clara, he had felt nothing special. She was merely a little girl who had just lost her parents, timid and shy. Out of respect for his stepmother, he allowed her to move about in front of him. But this girl was incredibly talkative, pestering him all day with questions about everything, disturbing his peace. At that time, he was at a stressful age with his studies. His pride was high and his temper short, so he was extremely annoyed. Every time he was pestered to the point of boredom, he would not even bother to look up. Jasper, take her to play. Jasper's temperament was naturally gentle, and he was the same age as her. It was convenient to push that childish nuisance onto him. Arthur was at leisure, leaving her to drift beside his half-brother. Clara was like a gentle spring stream, silent and unnoticed, or perhaps a small sparrow that had accidentally wandered deep into the great manor. That stream silently flowed into his dry life. The sparrow chirped, bit by bit pecking open a door that had long been closed. He did not know when he stopped finding her annoying. There was even a certain afternoon when he suddenly wanted to look at her, quietly stealing a glance from afar before immediately turning away. It was as if he could not let anyone discover his hidden thoughts, those vague stirrings that even he dared not look at directly. But it was all shattered into pieces by a lunch that year. That day, his stepmother, Madame Song, sent someone to invite him to dine. Arthur did not hate this stepmother. His own mother had just passed away when his father hurriedly married a new wife. His heart had always carried a small thorn. But that was not Madame Song's fault. She treated him with what could be considered closeness, at least more so than his philandering father. The meal consisted only of routine inquiries. His stepmother occasionally asked a few questions about his studies, and he answered indifferently, until she put down her chopsticks and asked, seemingly unintentionally, "How does Arthur feel about Clara?" Arthur's hand holding the spoon paused slightly, his voice calm and unruffled. "Cousin is lively and innocent naturally, she is good." It was an answer without flaws. After finishing the meal, he sat for a short while before excusing himself. Halfway back, he remembered he had left a small seal on the table, so he returned, his footsteps intentionally light. Just as he reached the corridor and was about to call out, he clearly heard the whispers from the inner room between his stepmother and her nanny. "Madam has asked the young master's opinion. It seems the young master does not object. Then consider it half done. I only hope so. It is a pity this body did not give me a son or daughter. If Clara can marry Arthur." Arthur stood frozen near the corridor for a moment, then turned and left. From that day on, he could no longer treat Clara normally. "Clara, exactly how much of your feelings for me are sincere, and how much is forced flattery?" Every gesture, every smile seemed to be engraved with the words, ulterior motives. So he distanced himself from her, pushed her away, and even spoke harshly. Then came that birthday banquet, where she was mocked by the young masters nearby. He heard it. "See that, Clara? This is the circle you are trying so hard to squeeze into. You and your aunt are nothing but a joke in their eyes." He flung his sleeve and left without pausing. But now, he only wanted to know, "Clara, are you sincere toward Jasper? If not, then he was the best choice for her. If she was, there was still a chance to turn things around." Arthur said he would fulfill my wish, yet for several days straight, his shadow was nowhere to be seen. When he finally appeared, he invited me to go outside the city to view the maple forest. I was lazy and did not want to go. He seemed to choke on something in his throat, taking a moment before continuing. "Jasper is going too. I am using the occasion to help you two get closer." My eyes immediately lit up. "Really?" Arthur did not answer, only coldly tossing back a sentence. "In half an hour, at the manor gate." Having spoken, he turned and left. The next morning, I changed into a newly made pale yellow dress, carefully applied lipstick in the mirror, and ran all the way to the manor gate. The carriages were already waiting. Instinctively, I looked for Jasper, but my eyes were immediately struck by a patch of blinding red. Arthur stood beside the first carriage. Usually, he dressed simply in blue or white. Yet today, was he not attracting too much attention? "Clara, what do you think of elder brother's outfit?" I did not know when Jasper had arrived at my side. Today, he wore only a set of silk robes in turquoise, which harmonized perfectly with my pale yellow outfit. I chose my words carefully. "Cousin Arthur does not suit red very well." I spoke the truth. Arthur's appearance was not bad. He was like a lotus in water, suited for elegant colors like bamboo green or snow white. He always carried an air of cold arrogance. But this bright red was like an elegant ink-wash painting suddenly splashed with a jar of cinnabar. It did not match at all. Jasper froze, then laughed softly, his shoulders shaking slightly. His eyes curved like crescent moons as he nodded slightly at me, silently agreeing without speaking. His pale yellow hair ribbon was blown gently by the wind, brushing lightly past my shoulder. "It seems elder brother put a lot of thought into today." He sighed softly. "It is a pity." "Pity what? I do not understand." Jasper smiled but did not answer. That smile held a trace of smugness, like a cat that had just won a fight. Only when everyone gathered to board the carriages did I realize something was wrong. Third brother, fourth sister, fifth brother, sixth brother. This long line of people was hardly for bonding. It was clearly taking children on an outing during a holiday. I walked quickly to catch up with Arthur, who was about to board the carriage. Ignoring his expression, I lowered my voice in confusion. "Cousin Arthur, did you not say you wanted to bring Jasper and me together?" I jerked my chin toward the noisy group behind us. "Then what is this? What kind of bonding involves leading a whole trip like this? More people?" He hesitated, seemingly unable to think of a reasonable excuse. He closed his eyes and gritted his teeth, to ward off evil spirits. I was rendered speechless by him, momentarily not knowing what to say. Ward off evil spirits. What evil? Were Jasper and I born as a pair of demons? Elder brother surely wants to use the opportunity to teach the younger siblings to admire the scenery and identify things. Jasper walked over, opening a cloak to drape over my shoulders. "It is cold outside. Let us board the carriage." The carriages rolled deep into the maple forest outside the city. Autumn was in full swing. The mountains and forests were dyed in colors, red as burning fire. The moment the carriages stopped, the flock of little children rushed down like sparrows released from a cage. To make movement easier this time, only a few servants had been brought along. How could they possibly watch over these hyperactive little ancestors? Arthur had intended to walk toward me, but fourth sister was already tugging at his sleeve, looking up to ask in a clear voice, elder brother, can I go down to the river to catch fish?" Fifth brother and sixth brother each hugged one of his legs. Jasper leisurely walked to my side, acting as if he did not see Arthur's predicament. He spoke gently. "I heard there is a 100-year-old red maple tree over there. Clara, would you like to go see it with me? It just so happens elder brother has to watch the siblings. We should not disturb him anymore." Arthur was tightly surrounded. He wanted to say something, but was cut off by a servant's panicked cry. "Eldest young master, third young master has climbed a tree. We cannot stop him." Arthur turned his head in shock, seeing third brother already atop the tree, making faces to tease him from high above. Arthur's face went dark, and he gritted his teeth. "Old third." Jasper acted as if he heard nothing, gently pulling my hand to turn in another direction, far away from that chaotic battlefield. Arthur's voice, trying to suppress his anger, drifted from behind us. "Get down. Get down here this instant. Little fifth, do not pull my jade pendant. Old third, dare to touch that beehive and see what happens. Fourth sister, do not lead your brother around aimlessly. Hurry up and hold those two back." I silently clasped my hands in my heart and offered him a stick of incense. "Cousin Arthur, playing both matchmaker and babysitter, it is hard on you. The two of us never found that 100-year-old maple tree." Jasper found a large, flat blue stone by the stream, used his handkerchief to wipe it clean, and signaled for me to sit. He then casually hitched up his robes and squatted down by the water's edge. I imitated him. Sitting beside him, I stared blankly at the school of small gray-backed fish swimming in the clear water. Should I confess? How'd I say it? Should I follow the dialogue in storybooks and break a branch as a token? But there are no flowers here. "Clara, what are you thinking about that has you so dazed?" He tilted his head to look at me. I looked at his reflection flickering in the water, my head still swirling with those burning words. Without thinking, I blurted out, I am thinking of you. His fingertips, which were touching the surface of the water, suddenly paused. Only ripples slowly spread out. I realized I had misspoken and hurriedly shook my head. No, I did not mean that. I was just thinking of a way to express. I had not yet finished my sentence when he spoke up to interrupt me. I am also thinking of you. I stared at him wide-eyed, my mind blank. I kept thinking, what kind of feelings do you have for me? I also wondered if you knew that I liked you. I like you. It was not that I had never imagined that sentence, but when those 3 words actually fell, touching my heart, my entire chest thundered like a drum, as if 100,000 birds were flapping their wings at once. The intimate gestures, the matching clothes, the subtle invitations, every image came rushing back, making my cheeks burn as if on fire. So, every approach, every light touch, every smile or hidden word was all the same intention. I thought I should loudly tell him that I had also liked him for a very long time. But the reality was that I looked at Jasper's face right in front of me. His cheeks were flushed, his eyes glistening with water, his gaze overflowing with affection. Beauty was right before my eyes, my thoughts were hard to suppress. The string of reason in my head snapped with a twang. When I came to, I had already leaned in close. On my lips was a soft sensation, cool eyes felt as if a feather had brushed past them. The sound of water, the wind, the distant laughter of the siblings all vanished, leaving only the sound of a heartbeat pounding so hard it shook my ears. Jasper's body suddenly went rigid. He looked up with a start, his eyes filled with astonishment he could not hide in time. Clara. His voice was hoarse, carrying a look of disbelief, almost just a breath. Only then was I shocked to realize what I had just done. My cheeks were scorching hot. I frantically wanted to retreat, but my body was stiff, I could only stare at him. No, I cannot let this atmosphere be awkward. I have to say something. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling. That, I stamped it. You are mine now. I like you too. After saying this, I covered my face with my hands. So embarrassing, embarrassed to death. Clara, oh Clara, how could you just kiss someone like that? Even learning from storybooks does not mean learning such explosive methods. Blaming myself, I did not hear the other person speak. I quietly lowered my hands and stole a glance. Jasper finally moved. He slowly raised his hand, gently brushing his lips. When he looked up, the astonishment in his eyes had vanished, leaving only a layer of unfathomable ripples rising in his gaze. I am Clara's. He narrowed his eyes slightly, smiling like a fox. Do you want to stamp it again? On the way back, I kept my head bowed the entire time, so scared I dared not look up. After all, having just confessed and then kissing someone until their lips were swollen. This story was truly embarrassing to the extreme. As it turned out, my worries were completely unnecessary, because Arthur was so busy he was about to go mad because of the children. He did not even bother to lift his eyelids, only glancing at us once to see everyone was present, then warily waving his hand. Back to the manor. Perhaps feeling that his matchmaking was not thorough enough, Arthur spoke again. There is a newly opened restaurant in the south of the city. The food is excellent. It is a good opportunity for Jasper to take you to taste it. The two of us intended to use this occasion to frankly admit our relationship and conveniently thank Cousin Arthur. As a result, just as the food was served, Jasper was recognized by a group of classmates and dragged to the room for some poetry contest. The room's soundproofing was terrible. The other side alternated between loud commentary and chanting poetry, noisy enough to split one's head. Jasper and I glanced at each other, and without planning it, we both sped up to finish the meal. By the time the other side finished, we had long since paid and left. Another time was a trip to admire plum blossoms at a temple outside the city. Arthur solemnly guaranteed the back mountain was deserted and quiet. As a result, we had only gone halfway up the mountain when the sky suddenly poured rain like a basin being tipped over. Arthur had brought only one umbrella large enough to cover 2 people, which he held ready. Jasper, without hesitation, covered my head completely with the umbrella, leaving half his shoulder instantly soaked. Yet throughout the journey, he shielded me tightly, not letting me get wet at all. The rain poured like a waterfall, and the mountain path was muddy and slippery. Arthur slipped and nearly fell onto me. Fortunately, Jasper quickly pulled me aside. In the end, Arthur's new clothes were stained with mud, and as soon as he returned to the manor, he caught a wine chill and was bedridden for several days. Oh, even the god of marriage is not as dedicated as he is. I brought some pastries to visit him. Just as I pushed the door open to enter, the smell of medicine still lingered in the room. Arthur was half, leaning against the headboard, his face slightly pale. He held a book in his hand, but his gaze was absent-mindedly fixed on the top of the bed curtains. Seeing me enter, his eyes moved slightly, and he tried to sit up straight. Is Cousin Arthur feeling better? I placed the food box on the table, trying to keep my voice cheerful. I brought some things to soothe the lungs for you. His voice was muffled. His gaze stopped on my face for a moment, then looked away. Troubling you to worry. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling. I thought for a moment, and finally decided to tell him. After all, he had taken such pains to arrange things. I cleared my throat softly, my fingers unconsciously twisting my sash. Jasper and we are together. Just as I finished speaking, my heart still could not help beating faster, and my face flushed hot. Arthur's fingers, holding the book, suddenly tightened, his knuckles turning white. His gaze made me feel a bit guilty, so I hurriedly added, "It is all thanks to Cousin Arthur. If not for you thinking of every way to give us private time, perhaps it would not have happened yet." The room was terrifyingly quiet, leaving only the sound of my forced laughter ringing out hollowly before quickly vanishing. Arthur stared at me intently, as if trying to suppress something screaming within his heart. Then he laughed. That smile on his pale face was even more unsightly than if he had cried. "Clara," he said, his voice hoarse. "Tell me, what do you like about him? Is it because of that face? Handsome men are not lacking in this world. Why must it be him?" My fingers, which were twisting my clothes, paused. After a moment, I lowered my voice. "Cousin Arthur, is my vision truly that shallow? Then what do I like about him? It seems you really do not understand why I like Jasper. Naturally, it is not just because of that face, but because between Jasper and me, there is something very rare, a quality. When I first entered the Shen Manor, I always lived in fear and timidity. No matter how careful I was, there were always people secretly whispering behind my back. Those pitying or scrutinizing gazes stuck to me like wet willow branches, impossible to shake off. You, Arthur, although sometimes gentle, would still unintentionally reveal your annoyance. It was an arrogance looking down from above, a sentiment that because I was pitiful, you could not lower yourself to argue with me. Only Jasper was different. From the very beginning, he always placed me on equal footing with himself. He never found watching ants carry food with me to be boring, nor did he ever mock me as foolish for asking about trivial matters. He always listened seriously to everything I said, and joined me in doing things others considered dull. He never viewed me as anyone's shadow, nor did he ever pity my past. Between him and me, there was never any sense that he had to bestow charity upon me, nor that I needed to rely excessively on him. In front of him, I am simply Clara. I do not need to curry favor, nor do I need to pity myself. But how could I explain these things for Arthur to understand? Therefore, I only replied softly, "I cannot explain it clearly either. Feelings inherently do not need a reason." After a while, Arthur suddenly gave a soft laugh, his voice so low it was almost a whisper. "True. This matter does not require so many principles." Having said all that needed to be said, I bid him farewell and turned to gently open the door. The wooden door creaked softly, cutting through the stifling atmosphere and the heavy scent of medicine behind me. Outside, the cool wind brushed against my face, making my heart feel relieved, as if I had been set free. I did not look back, walking straight out. The door behind me closed without a sound. Days passed quietly, melting away like snow under the corridor, silent and soundless. The matter between Jasper and me was like a flower bud in early spring on a branch. We could not hide it even if we wanted to. However, facing my aunt, I still needed to offer a formal explanation. As the year ended and the new year approached, the manor was decorated with lanterns and flowers, and even the air carried the faint sweet scent of sticky rice cakes. Aunt Song's health had improved slightly. She was leaning against the warm bed beside the charcoal stove, her hands fingering a 5-colored thread. Outside the window, snow fell lightly, and tiny water droplets gathered on the damp wooden frame. Jasper and I sat beside her, the charcoal stove making soft crackling sounds. "Aunt Song." I peeled a segment of honey mandarin orange and offered it to her. My fingertips were slightly cold, but my heart was beating somewhat fast. "There is something I wish to report to you." Aunt Song accepted the mandarin segment, the pale yellow candlelight illuminating her gentle profile. She looked up, her gaze sweeping a circle between Jasper and me. She seemed to have realized something. The smile at the corners of her lips faded slightly. Jasper's voice was gentle but clear. "Mother, Clara and I are in love. We hope for your blessing." The room suddenly fell silent. Aunt Song's gaze stopped on my face, carrying scrutiny mixed with a very faint trace of disappointment, which finally turned into a sigh so light it was inaudible. She did not look at Jasper, but only asked me softly, "Yes." I nodded vigorously. "Aunt, it is Jasper. From the beginning, it has always been him." Aunt Song remained silent, her fingertips unconsciously twisting the 5-colored thread in her hand. She said nothing for a long time. The thread wound tight, then went slack, wrapping around her hand over and over. Just as I thought she was about to object, she suddenly patted the back of my hand gently, as if she had set down a burden she had carried for a long time. "Fine then." Her voice was soft. "The two of you are good together." Just as the old year ended, Jasper invited a familiar matchmaker to perform the 3 letters and 6 etiquettes. Every ritual was carried out fully and properly. Everyone in the manor tacitly understood, simply remarking that this matter was water flowing into a canal, destined to happen. Immediately after came the spring examinations. Both Arthur and Jasper entered the examination hall. When the golden list was released, although they were not at the very top, their results were brilliant enough to bring glory to the family. Before the joy in the manor had dissipated, Jasper turned to discuss the wedding with the elders. It was set for May, when the pomegranate flowers bloomed red as fire. As the wedding day approached, the manor bustled with preparations. Aunt Song called me over and opened an old wooden box. Inside were several pieces of exquisite jewelry, along with a stack of banknotes and thick land deeds. Before I could shake my head to refuse, she stuffed the box straight into my hands. "This is the dowry your parents left for you. I only prepared a small private courtyard for you on their behalf." "You are deceiving me." That year, my family's business had collapsed, and the assets had been sold off almost completely. How could these things remain? I said nothing, only feeling a stinging in my nose as my eyes grew hot. Aunt Song kept smiling, gently pulling me into her embrace, her hands skillfully tucking a few loose strands of hair behind my ear. "My Clara has suffered too many grievances. From now on, you must live well, truly well." She gave me many more instructions. I listened, nodding at every sentence. Before the wedding, the bride and groom were not allowed to meet, to observe this taboo. I moved into the separate courtyard Aunt Song had prepared. The night before the wedding, Arthur arrived. "A small token of my regard. Consider it a contribution to add to your dowry." 2 boxes. One contained jade hairpins, gold bracelets, and precious jewels. Sitting atop those valuable gifts was the scented sachet he had confiscated years ago. I was somewhat surprised. He did not look at me, but spoke softly. "The other box contains the relics Jasper's mother left behind years ago. He organized them a few days ago and asked me to bring them to you." "Thank you, Cousin Arthur." He looked at me for a long time, as if wanting to say something, but there were some words that no longer needed to be said. Finally, he turned and left silently. On the wedding day, I was so tired I thought my soul was about to escape from the top of my head. The phoenix crown weighed heavily, making my neck sore, and layers upon layers of wedding robes wrapped my body tight, making me feel like a clumsily wrapped dumpling. Once the tedious ceremonies were finally over, I could barely keep my eyes open. I even drank the nuptial wine with my eyes squeezed shut, relying on Jasper to hold my wrist and help me pour it in. When the door finally closed, shutting out all the noise from outside, red candles burned brightly, their warm light filling the room. I collapsed limply onto the wedding bed spread with 100 suns, brocade, and let out a long sigh. The bed dipped slightly as Jasper sat down beside me and began to remove the phoenix crown and pearls from my head. As the layers of jewelry were taken off, my scalp relaxed, making me comfortable enough to almost let out a soft moan. He helped me sit up. Beside us, light snacks, pastries, and a bowl of hot porridge had already been laid out. We sat squeezed together at the small table by the window, burying our heads to eat like 2 starving people. Once our stomachs were warm, we truly felt alive again. The candles crackled softly. Jasper stood up. I did not know where he produced a list of gifts, and then conveniently grabbed an abacus. "Come here, Clara." His fox-like eyes curved, revealing a bit of teasing. "Let us calculate how much we harvested today." I laughed, my spirits instantly lifting, and immediately leaned close to watch his fingertips flying over the abacus beads, muttering, "Gift money from the main table." Elders from each branch contributed a total of, plus the amount we saved before. When the final bead clicked down, he looked up at me. "It is enough for you to open a moderate-sized shop in the East District, with even a little surplus to rotate for the first 2 months. I forgot to swallow the piece of chestnut cake in my mouth. "A shop. His voice was gentle, every word tapping against my heart. Selling pastries is fine, or rouge and powder is fine too, as long as it is a place you can rely on. Rely on. Those two words fell lightly, yet they caused layer upon layer of great waves to ripple across the lake of my heart. The figure of Aunt Song enduring a lifetime of forbearance, those years of living under someone else's roof, treating lightly with every step. Every image and fragment of old memories came rushing back without warning. But I tried to smile, though my voice was a little hoarse. Do I not already have you? He paused, then smiled softly. Clara, the human heart is the thing one can rely on least. I hope to grow white-haired with you for a lifetime. Naturally, that is the best outcome. But I hope even more that you never need to watch anyone's expression, never need to beg anyone for charity, and that even if you leave anyone, you can still live well. Having stood firm, Jasper had witnessed with his own eyes the fickleness of his own father. He understood better than anyone. How much certainty is there in love in this world? Today it is sweet as honey, who knows if tomorrow it will turn into poison. Therefore, he did not want her to become a drifting raft relying on the big tree that was him. He wanted her to become a sturdy tree herself, knowing how to take root, standing tall and proud even in the wind and rain. He hoped his Clara, even if the world changed and hearts turned in the future, would always have the spirit to say, no. Jasper. My voice trembled slightly, carrying a choke I could barely disguise. I wanted to say something, but felt that any words spoken would be too light, insufficient to hold all my emotions. Seeing through my fluster, he raised his hand to pull me into his arms, his chin resting gently on the top of my head, his warm breath brushing my ear. Silly. He laughed softly, his chest vibrating with his breath. Why cry? In the future, you will be shopkeeper Song, and I will be the errand boy running tasks for you. He intentionally drawled his voice, full of smug teasing. That tear was stopped by his words before it could fall, but the bottom of my heart overflowed with a sense of peace I had never known. I escaped his embrace, my finger tapping lightly on his chest. Who needs you to run errands? Then what do you want me to do? He blinked, looking at me leisurely. I leaned in close, intentionally dragging out the final sound. Warm the bed for the shopkeeper. Jasper laughed, his long fingers tracing my hair, gently tucking a few strands up. Then this humble one asks to serve the shopkeeper in going to bed to rest. The candlelight flickered, illuminating the sparkling laughter in his eyes. I looked at him, dazed for a long moment. Luckily, it is Jasper. Luckily, for this entire life, it is Jasper. The bakery opened in the East Market and was named Clara's Pavilion. Using Clara's name. At first, it only sold a few types of pastries the two of us devised together. The ingredients were used with sincerity, and the prices were affordable. Within less than 3 months, the aroma spread throughout the streets, and customers flowed in and out endlessly. Of course, the primary credit could not exclude the capable shopkeeper's husband, Jasper. Once, a colleague asked him, "Which bakery has good food recently?" Jasper smiled modestly. "Clara's Pavilion in the East City. That is my wife's shop. These past few days she has been testing a special lotus cake. I will bring some for my sister-in-law to taste." That colleague went to buy some to try, received a discount, and was even gifted an extra box of candied fruits. The next afternoon, upon meeting Jasper, he laughed immediately. "My wife has terrible morning sickness and cannot swallow anything, but she praised only your family's cakes. Tomorrow, could I trouble brother Jasper to keep a few portions for me?" Jasper naturally smiled and nodded. It was like a crack had opened and spread from there. Gradually, a rumor quietly spread among the colleagues. The shopkeeper's husband at Clara's Pavilion was named Jasper, and one could place orders through him. Thus, every few days, someone would seek him out at his workplace, either passing a small slip of paper or whispering instructions. My younger sister asked to order a box of soft lotus root cakes with osmanthus filling. "Please trouble Brother Jasper. Brother Jasper, regarding that dried apricot cake from the other day, can you keep 2 boxes for tomorrow? My mother keeps mentioning it." On his desk, aside from official documents and files, there were occasionally a few handwritten notes, clearly listing the names of people ordering cakes and the pickup dates. When the shop was busy with customers, it often had to close late. Every time he finished work, Jasper would tidy up the house and then follow the scattered streetlights to come pick up Clara. Halfway there, he would see the familiar figure from afar, busy beside the counter with the shop assistant. He would pause his steps, watching quietly, as if a segment of old memories suddenly returned. When Clara first arrived at the Shen Manor, he often looked at her, always feeling she was another version of himself, also alone and helpless, also trapped in a gilded cage. What truly moved his heart was on his 13th birthday. In truth, he had not intended to celebrate his birthday. His mother had once said she would be with him that day, but before his birthday arrived, she had passed away. That fragile joy turned into a sharp thorn, silently piecing his heart every year. No one in the manor remembered, and he was accustomed to the silence, treating it as a normal day passing by. Unexpectedly, he did not know where she had heard of it. That night, he sat alone in the courtyard under the faint moonlight, when the sound of small footsteps suddenly broke the silence. He looked up to see Clara carrying a small paper lantern. Finding her way to him, the lantern emitted a weak, dim yellow light, dancing on her face and illuminating the beads of sweat on the tip of her nose. Her eyes, however, shone frighteningly bright. "Jasper," she panted, her voice ringing clear in the empty night due to fatigue, carrying a small joy at finding him. She ran over as if presenting a treasure, taking a small oil paper package from her robes. She opened it to reveal 2 longevity buns, round and misshapen, with a crude red dot dabbed on top. One look and he knew she had made them herself. "I learned how to make them in the kitchen." Her cheeks were slightly red. "Happy birthday." He intended to say he did not celebrate birthdays, but her eyes were so bright, even the moonlight seemed biased, shining upon her radiantly. His heart softened a little. The darkness that had suppressed his heart for so long seemed to be partially dispelled by that tiny light. From then on, in his barren life, there was an additional moon. The noisy sounds of the market pulled Jasper back to reality. Clara looked up and saw him standing at the street corner, smiling silently as he watched her. "You are here." She curved her eyes in a smile, naturally reaching her hand out toward him. Jasper walked over quickly, grasping her slightly cold hand. Warmth spread from his palm to the bottom of his heart. Let us go home." The two walked shoulder to shoulder down the long street. She chirped like a bird, recounting the happy events of the day, which new recipe was best selling. Plans to open another shop in the South City. Jasper tilted his head to listen, occasionally responding, his gaze never leaving her radiant eyes. He looked up at the sky. The summer evening was slow, the western horizon spread a layer of orange-pink clouds, and it was not yet time for the moon to rise. But it did not matter, because his moon was currently right beside him. Warm, vivid, the one and only person belonging solely to him. Clara. True love is not a trophy to be won through persistent flattery or self-sacrifice, but a sanctuary found in equality and mutual respect. Clara's journey teaches us that a heart cannot flourish where it is merely tolerated or viewed from a pedestal of arrogance. Genuine devotion thrives when we are met as equals, not as someone to be pitied or managed but as a person to be heard and honored. Furthermore, Jasper's wisdom reminds us that the highest form of love does not foster dependency. Instead, it empowers us to stand on our own feet. We should never settle for being a nuisance in someone's shadow when we can be the moon in another's sky, cherished for exactly who we are. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.